Hey guys, Melissa and Aaron here.
Hello, we've reached the dangerous age of pre-crime where people are suspected before they become suspects, have committed any crime, or done anything wrong, yet still people use the most common excuse of, I have nothing to hide, I haven't done anything wrong.
Sure that you are not a criminal, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, I've had people tell me that to my face before while reporting that this is all okay, this huge big data police state that they're encircling us with is fine because if you have nothing to hide and you haven't done anything wrong, the problem is that we are to a point now where you don't even know what is being used against you. Every dystopic future novel and movie you've ever seen has brought us to the point where we are right now, and we're living in it.
Extensive information gathering on every American. Human experiments with drugs and psychosurgery. Electronic surveillance. The era of the computer, invasion of privacy. Growing government and corporate power over our lives. A people plagued by dehumanization, loneliness, and violence. Dramatic? Perhaps. But we are losing control of our technology and our lives.
This is what's going on. Minority Report in real life, how social media posts impact your threat rating. I bet you guys don't even realize that every single one of us has a threat rating. And no, I'm not talking about Homeland Security threat ratings. I'm talking about a threat rating that your local police department, which I guess is now going to be federalized pretty soon, will have if you dial 911 on you. You actually are getting a color-coded threat rating every time you encounter police.
And I think of it often as an iceberg. There's the little piece of 911 above the water line that is what the public and most of the public safety folks see, and below the water line there's a massive infrastructure.
For example, your local police department is using numerous tools and applications that might determine how you get treated during a routine traffic stop or in response to your neighbor's call about loud music. One such application is known as Beware, because there are no routine calls.
Beware is a very robust, powerful, cloud-hosted, secure solution that quickly accesses a myriad of commercial data sources, public data sources, and presents a threat assessment during the short window of an emergency response.
This has been sold to police departments since 2012 and can be accessed on any internet-enabled device, so whatever they got in the car, tablets, smartphones, whatever. The app explores billions of records in social media postings, commercial and public databases for law enforcement needs, churning out risk profiles in real time using an algorithm. They give you a threat score.
Red would be a high threat alert, a yellow would be a modest but noteworthy threat alert, and a green is there is no threat alert. So we have a proprietary algorithm where we establish a threat score. It's almost like a credit report, only for an emergency responder,
which sends a rating to the police officer before they ever see you.
The officers can drill down if there is a red or yellow threat to get increasingly greater levels of detail.
When they're coming to your house, this Beware program sends an officer information about pretty much all kinds of stuff. It's so much more than just your police record or anything like that, okay? It's everyone who lives in your house, their cell phone numbers, their criminal history, the vehicles registered to the address, the threat rating, which is based on scanning all of your online comments on social media, and also recent purchases that have been processed for, quote, warning signs.
That they're taking from billions and billions of customer records.
And also we do deep web crawling and assess social media commentary, so there is a component in the threat score relative to the web and any comments that could be construed as offensive.
Quote, any comments that could be construed as offensive will contribute to your threat score. So for example, say you posted something on your Facebook page about how you think police brutality sucks, or you disagree with no-knock SWAT raids, or you think the CIA torture tactics are bad. Just let that run. It could be anything, right? And this information is not made available to you. You don't get to know what your threat rating is, what exactly it was based on, and you don't have any ability to dispute it because you don't even get to know what it is. Okay, it's like the no-fly list. You don't get to know why you're on it. You don't get to know what your threat rating is. An officer is already making a decision about who you are based on things like what you post on Facebook and Twitter, based on things like what you buy at the store with your credit card. You don't even get to know what that is. So by the time the officer sees you and you interact with this person, they're going to have a preconceived notion of who you are before they ever even see you.
I believe if you take what has been happening since in kind of our post 9/11 security world, what you're seeing is the establishment of a surveillance society. You're seeing the establishment of a surveillance network.
I got stopped in a routine traffic stop a couple weeks ago and hadn't really done anything. And immediately, before even speaking to me or asking me, did I see the sign, was I watching for traffic, he had, of course, logged into the database, ran my plates, found out who I was, and likely used this system because when he got out of his car, he immediately told me to put my hands where he could see them. Because apparently he was paranoid that I was going to do something in broad daylight at 3 o'clock in the afternoon that might jeopardize his life.
In a small town.
Where did he get that impression from a routine traffic stop that was extremely minor? I managed to just talk to him like a normal person. He calmed down. He didn't seem suspicious of me after saying, well, your tent seems like it's probably illegal and I've got probable cause, and making some other excuses for why he had come on so aggressively when he honestly wasn't even an aggressive cop.
Didn't you say that he just kept using the phrase probable cause over and over? I wasn't here for this, guys.
He did, but of course I'm very well known for my political activism to the extent that I've been involved. I wrote for numerous websites. My name is out there. Among other things, I've written stories critical of police, and I've been arrested for protesting against Karl Rove. All of that is in their system, and they likely saw it in a system that either was made by Entrado or is very much like Entrado. And that's the kind of thing that can happen. We absolutely know that this can target dissenters as well as actual criminals. Of course, there's been publicized cases where stupid robbers rob a bank and post the video on Facebook to brag about it. Those people have been caught and arrested through Facebook, and they're raw criminals. They should be caught and arrested. But what's happening to other people who aren't committing crimes but are dissenters and political activists? Well, we already know from Homeland Security memos and FBI memos that political activists of all different stripes and persuasions have been labeled as potential domestic terrorists. And besides being extremely inflammatory, that's a very dangerous label because it goes out in these systems, it goes through fusion centers, it goes through real-time crime centers that are run now in every major city, and 4 out of 5 police already use social media in conducting every investigation.
And the Terrorist Screening Center stands ready to help you. And with the teamwork of local, state, and federal law enforcement, we have an excellent opportunity to see the picture and solve the puzzle before these terrorists can strike again. Someone called 911 and reported a suspicious person. As you guessed, she's gonna be a Category 3 hit. And since it's very important that we don't let her know that we know, both the dispatcher and the officer need to make sure she doesn't hear the radio traffic.
Stand by. If I could ask you to wait right here, please.
Sure.
As we also know, alternative media is considered in the Homeland Security lexicon. It's listed under domestic terrorism. So just being part of the alternative media outlet in any way, we're already in there. And based on what this vice president of Entrado has said, they can drill down on this data. So they don't just see your color-coded rating. They see a rating, and they can actually drill down into it and see specifically like things you've done and what you've said.
And yet, when social media evidence and consumer purchases have been used as primary evidence for search warrants, it's been upheld in 80% of cases in the courts. Entrado is the company that processes the nation's 911 calls, and Beware is software that's integrated into the officer's software, so it's pretty much system-wide. Departments can opt out or not buy the program, but they're handing them out like candy through federal grants. And to date, only one city has even said no to this. So Entrado's Beware program has been out there for a couple years now, but the public's not even really aware of it. And to date, there's only been one city council that has significantly challenged this very dangerous spyware in the hands of police. That's in Bellingham, Washington State. And the city council acknowledged that if the police department had this technology, they would not be privy to any details or be able to hold police usage of it accountable in any way, despite some reassuring statements from the police chief. And the only way they were able to restrict this was to deny funding for the technology. After an overwhelming number of citizens at this city council meeting spoke out against the software, acknowledged its privacy concerns and its potential for abuse, its potential to go after political dissidents and the like, and they found that they were able to block it on the funding grounds, even though the federal government was providing the bulk of the money for the first 3 years. We heard about this at recent Bilderberg meetings where the big tech heads from Silicon Valley are working with the industrial titans, the politicians, the businessmen who really run the world to use big data to more and more manage these systems. And you've got private contracting firms like Palantir and others going to Bilderberg, meeting with these people and working with them behind the scenes to do consumer, private, government contracting spying, including for the NSA. Now here's Reuters pointing out that cops are scanning social media to assess your threat rating, and it's really getting out of hand, leading towards a pre-crime paradigm as seen in the image from Minority Report. And they talk about New World Systems, which is one software platform that allows dispatchers.
Nice name.
Yeah, great name, right? To see if people have had contact with police before when they have police encounters during routine traffic stops, visits to homes, and other types of encounters. They have a software called PredPol, which is predictive policing, where they try to guess and forecast where crimes will occur next and which people are at the highest risk. It's very much the same as this Entrada system, which they talk about 2 paragraphs below that. And in between that, in between talking about Entrada's Beware system and this other system, PredPol, they talk about the emerging $7 billion infrastructure network, FirstNet, which was set up through a congressional mandate. It was a rider on the 2012 Tax Relief for the Middle Class Act.
Is that anything like Skynet?
It's going to be a mobile broadband network across the entire infrastructure of all the states and territories of the U.S., all jurisdictions, and it will integrate EMS, firefighter, and of course police, transponder, 911 calls, databases, information, as well as that from other law enforcement agencies at the state and federal level. It's all going to be integrated and managed through the congressionally mandated FirstNet infrastructure, which is a public-private partnership. It's a government-initiated corporation that's run by, for the most part, the major telecoms and some other key business people, some people who have had involvements in banks and stuff. You know, some of the board members include the Secretary of Commerce and the Attorney General, which for the time being is Eric Holder, who's been involved in so much shady material, including spying on civilians. It still has not come to light the extent of the involvement of the FBI in the Stingray programs, those cell phone interceptors that imitate cell phone towers and suck up users' data, whether or not they've been accused of a crime or in an active surveillance situation. And the FBI has been leasing this technology and training local law enforcement on its use, and it's been put into deployment. So the Electronic Privacy Information Center sued the FBI to get release on documents related to Stingray, the cell phone interceptors that imitate cell phone sites. And they detail all the work. They got 400 pages finally released from the FBI after all these court rulings, after delays, etc.
But those aren't the documents, right?
And here's the documents. Under pressure from a court order, the FBI released blank, cell something, Stingray lab exercises, blank, Stingray field exercises, blank.
So this is just all redacted.
Super blank. Super blank glossary and acronyms.
Oh, geez.
Useful acronyms, blank.
Here's something.
Base station controller, base station ID.
Stuff that you would have no idea because everything else is redacted.
But what these documents did show was that FBI personnel clearly have written the book on how to use this cell phone interceptor technology, And given that we know local law enforcement have been using it, there's a case in Florida where they had to admit in court how it's used. There's enough information to know the FBI has been giving this technology to law enforcement and training them on its use, and they have retained supervision over it. That's one of the details that came out in the few parts of these documents that have not been redacted. When you look into NextGov at who's running it, the acting general manager of FirstNet is a guy named T.J. Kennedy, who's from Utah, and he's been involved in their firefighter, EMS, and highway patrol activities throughout his whole career. But he also had a key position at the public safety as the head of public safety command for the Salt Lake City Olympics in 2002, which was headed by the likes of Mitt Romney and many other key people there in Utah. And along with the Salt Lake City Chief of Police, T.J. Kennedy is involved in administering this FirstNet system. Now, it's interesting and troubling that also involved with the 2002 Olympic Games, just by coincidence, were both the NSA and FBI, who it was revealed were involved for a 6-month period surrounding the Olympic Games, sucking up cell phone and text data from people in and around the Salt Lake area without warrants, before all the revelations came forward. And now today...
So they were testing it.
They were testing it. And now today it's come to light the extent of the NSA surveillance. They've got data on all of America in total, even though we're still told to our faces from our so-called leaders that they're not spying on Americans. Now they have the Utah data hub out in the desert there that runs and sucks up and collects untold volumes of NSA data. And you know, among that is a lot of consumer data, purchase information, threat warning information, and all of this is going to be increasingly integrated into these government and para-government and governance structures, including these very databases we're talking about.
I mean, I always thought it was interesting whenever Google Fiber first came out. The first 3 cities they chose to put it in were Kansas City, Austin, Texas, and Provo, Utah. And I thought, wow, out of all the cities they chose to put this fiber in, Provo, Utah just did not. Why not LA? Why not New York? Why not any place else that's not Provo, Utah? Well, apparently Provo, Utah is less than a 27-minute drive away from that giant data hub. If you look right here on Google Maps, it shows you right here. It's less than 23 miles away from the Camp Williams airfield, which is the closed airfield where they've got the NSA spy hub out there, Bluffdale. Why did they choose to put Google Fiber in Provo, Utah? Gee, I wonder.
It's so expansive and so troubling. It has everything to do with the issues we've heard about from the fusion centers that already integrate Homeland Security, FBI, Special Intelligence Forces, military if need be, local and state law enforcement, your average police, all integrating privately collected and government collected data on individuals, issuing threat assessments, and spying on people without warrants, including political activists, dissidents, and people of interest, community groups, you name it. And as the founder of Intrado pointed out, the 911 emergency call system is literally the tip of the iceberg for a huge database infrastructure.
Well, listen, every time you make a phone call, every time I make a phone call, every time your listeners call into the show to make a phone call, the NSA gets a record of that call.
This information and the way our country has put it together is something that we should also put forward as an example for the rest of the world.
I know you say you are protecting U.S. citizens from terrorism, but I had a dream you were really just spying on everybody from a taxpayer-funded $2 billion spy hub in the Utah desert. And when I went there, instead of files on the bin Ladens of the world, the whole complex was filled to the brim with every American's phone calls and videos and photos and voice chats and email transcripts and text and file transfers and logins and social networking details and stored data information from Google and Yahoo and Facebook and YouTube.
There's no overstating how massive this system is and how big it's about to become in the era of big data that we live in, where the information we put out on social media and in our cell phones is part of the surveillance network that integrates into surveillance, where our data that we generate and put out to the world becomes a mode of surveillance used against us. Forget innocent until proven guilty. From now on, we're profiled, monitored, assessed, and considered a threat until we commit a crime, and then they've got all that data on us. If they could find something to throw the book at you, intimidate you, harass you, or call you out for.
Do people even realize this is the world we live in? When you go back to that statement of, if I'm not doing anything wrong, I don't have anything to hide. We've seen certain groups targeted for their beliefs. Freedom of speech has been completely thrown out the window in a lot of cases. You see all these cases of police brutality going on. I mean, we see them every day pretty much in the media. You have to understand that if you call 911 and something is going on in your house, they're not just going to get the 911 call information and basic background information of whether or not someone in your home has a warrant for their arrest, for example, or anything like that. They're not just going to have the basic arrest record type stuff. They're going to get all this information about who you are. They're going to get your digital fingerprint. They're going to know what you think and feel about things. They're going to know if you posted a picture of your breakfast last week. They're going to know what your cat's name is. I mean, they're going to know so much about you before they ever get there. And so then we have to trust that the officer responding to the scene is not going to make judgment calls about you as a person that will color their treatment of you when they get there, which quite obviously is exactly what this is for. So if they disagree with you on a personal level regarding your political beliefs that you've shared online, for example.
And what happens if they don't like you? What happens if you speak ill will against the government? What happens if you say something they consider disloyal?
You tell me, are they going to be objective, or are they going to let that color their treatment of you when they get to the scene?
Now, if I were to do this by hand as a human being, this would take me days. How long does it take the wearer to make this assessment and give me that red, green, or yellow indicator that I can use?
Our target response window is less than 60 seconds.
So maybe at this point you're saying to yourself, fine, I'll just disengage. I'll get off of Twitter, I'll get off of Facebook. I will buy a computer that I never ever hook to the internet. I won't have a cell phone. All these things, right? Well, then you're going to be an outlier. You're going to stand out. That in and of itself is going to make you look even more suspicious, because what do you have to hide if you haven't done anything wrong?
It's really happening. The surveillance Big Brother society really is here, and it's much, much worse than Orwell or anyone else ever could have imagined. That's not an exaggeration, it's an understatement.
Next Generation 911 is really starting to move around the country. There are a number of states that have started to move and actually have implemented and are using some components of Next Generation 911 live today. But really, Next Gen 911 is an evolutionary path. And agencies can start anywhere where they have kind of immediate shortcomings or areas that they need to focus on, and then they can just stair step, and it can continue to grow as the marketplace evolves, as additional products and services, content becomes available.
It raises the specter of you're automatically suspicious until we prove that you're not. It raises the specter of a universal, I would call it a universal wiretap, a persistent universal wiretap on every single person.
It's very troubling. It's happened to dictatorships in the past when they didn't have 1/1000th of the technology we have today.
I guess slavery really is freedom.
Anything that could be a further